All top players at club level.
I think we've got...
But not at international level.
Pace scares us to death there. We've got 3 players, or 2 players. Now we've got 3 because he's playing Butcher sort of as an half-sweeper, if you like. And we've got 3 players, basically, who are not happy when players are doing like they did to Mark Wright, turning them. And you must have something at the back, just as a safety valve. You've got to protect them.
All right, I hope in a moment we're going to have time to talk also about the pluses that we may have seen in that first 45 minutes. Remember, 0-0 in Tbilisi. We'll be back for the whole of the second half after the break. And welcome back. The players just coming onto the pitch again for the second half in Tbilisi. A score just in from Dublin. Wales are ahead after 17 minutes, a goal by Ian Rush for Wales against the Republic of Ireland. Let's just have a quick word with Kevin and Mick before we go back to our commentary team. The pluses you've seen in the first half.
I thought the bright start. I thought that we were very positive early on. But I think that we probably sat back a little bit after. I thought Butch Wilkins has done well, and I'm his biggest critic. You know, at least he has got stuck in the middle of the park, and he's tried to knock balls forward, which is a change. I think the 2 front players.
Right, let's see how they go in the second half. We're back with you, David Pleat and Martin Tyler.
Thank you, Brian. No substitutes at half-time for either country. The Soviet Union are in the same World Cup group as France, Hungary and Canada, and the former Newcastle United manager Richard Dinnis is here representing the Canadian Football Association, doing a spot of scouting for the Canadian team manager Tony Waiters. The running from Zavarov, and a corner inside the first 30 seconds of the second half, conceded by England, where Peter Shilton now will want to keep the discipline and concentration that England had for much of the first half around him. And it's dragged wide by Gotsmanov on the far side. Flicked on, in fact, Besanoff letting fly, and England could have been punished then.
Once again, Martin, that attack came from Deminenko, surging past Huddle, and it means that Huddle is forced to do defensive duties more than he would wish. He's not the man to chase people back in towards his own box. He wants to be further up the field, making the play.
Well, Bobby Robson, never short of a comment, and nor to Don Howe, who's been able to put, for the time being at least, the problems of his job at Highbury behind him. Besanoff. Kuznetsov. Alenikov. England trying to hold a square back line in case the long ball comes forward. And instead it comes forward from England, and it's Gary Lineker with the sort of chances that he's been getting all season for Everton. And they're just that much harder at international level.
Soviets were caught napping there. Terrific ball by Huddle. One of the few players in the world that can see that ball. Terrific ball.
Lineker settling for the shot before he got inside the Soviet penalty area. Chibadze. Demyanenko. Chibadze's been fairly conservative in his play. He's not played a league game yet this season because of a long-standing injury. So this is very much his comeback match. Away goes Lineker again, found this time by Wright, but he's very short of support. Well, concern on the Soviet bench. Movement on the England bench because Steve Hodge has got up again, still with his tracksuit on, and is doing some preparatory sprints down the touchline. Lineker has given it away for England. And Gotsmanov unnecessarily fouled really by Viv Anderson. although Demyanenko does bomb forward down the left-hand side for the Soviets, they've got no natural left-sided midfield player. Godsmanov, very right-sided, doing the job at the moment, as he was when he won the penalty.
Yes, it was noticeable in training. Only Blokhin had a really educated left foot amongst all their players. And you would feel that in a country the size of this, that they'll have some very talented left footers. Perhaps they suffer from the same problem we do.
Unlike the Soviets to be weak on the left, David. Here's Demyanenko. Rodionov, right tackle, and England looking to break again. Hoddle, it was Wilkins who was springing forward then. Back from Bubnov. Bessonov with an earlier ball forward, straight onto the head of Anderson. Alenikov. And Hoddle able to squeeze it back to Peter Shilton. There was a little scare when we arrived in the Soviet Union. Peter Shilton had forgotten his passport, and they did have a reason not to let him in, which in a football sense would have been disastrous for England, but common sense happily prevailed. Hoddle. And Bobby Robson is now talking to Steve Hodge and looking to make the first substitution for England and give Hodge his first cap. Meanwhile, it's Kenny Sansom. Cowan's making a run into the box, which is, I'm sure, what Hodge will be asked to do. A midfield player who can score goals, Steve Hodge. 23 years old, in his first season with Aston Villa. And Lineker beaten by the punch of Dasayev. Collected by Hoddle. Anderson. A shooting chance here for England. And Hoddle this time, most uncharacteristically, giving the ball away.
It was good to see Anderson make the break there. The fullbacks have got to force the issue if they have the opportunity.
Peter Shilton is the only survivor from the England team that played in Moscow, and won in Moscow, in fact, in 1973. Right. Not just individual performances under scrutiny here, but the whole shape of England's team play. Butcher, who had such a good World Cup in 1982. Hoddle, who was only on the fringes then, although he went to Spain. Wilkins. Zavarov was well read by Mark Wright. And the ricochet favoured England, and in particular Chris Waddle, with Lineker waiting in the middle. Wright has stayed forward as well. And Waddle couldn't deliver the cross, and he may have embarrassed his teammates there. The Soviets switching the play to what looked like useful effect. Wilkins can't go anywhere except out of play because Kondratiev was barring the way back to Shilton. And now, as Mark Wright might feel that he was sold short a little by Chris Waddle then, it's Steve Hodge who comes on for Gordon Cowans. 8 minutes gone in the second half. And if you've just come home from work, the news here from Tbilisi is that it's still the Soviet Union 0, England 0.
Hodge has that extra bit of zip, the ability to get forward quickly, which I think will find most beneficial this half, particularly as towards the end of the game, legs may tire.
There are some England fans, just a few, in this big crowd, as the Soviets have an injury problem. They play a mast at the moment, but some of the small number of England supporters have spent almost a week getting here. And it's Besanov who has to go off. Malofeyev, the Soviet coach, talking now to his group of substitutes. He's named 8, but the understanding we have is that 3 plus a goalkeeper are permissible. Eduard Malofeyev, who was a member of the Soviet World Cup squad in England in 1966. So for the moment, the home side down to 10 men. Right. Waddle. Beardsley has gone ahead of him, and that was nicely played by England. Lineker going to the near post, and Chivadze was aware of the point of danger and took the sting out of England's attack with a calm piece of defensive play. Gotsmanov filling in at the moment for Besanov. Kuznetsov getting away with a piece of miscontrol. Chivadze. The crowd urging him to contribute more going forward. And it's his pass, and a good one too. The danger dealt with by Anderson, but kept in by Demyanenko. Aleinikov. And number 15, Oleg Blokhin. Looks as though, after all, he will get his 99th cap. And they want to bring on, in fact, 2 substitutes, it seems. Litovchenko is waiting to join the fray as well. Hoddle. Beardsley trying to turn Bubnov. It didn't quite come off for him. There's Litovchenko, who's a midfield player. Anderson got the ball, but such was the fall of Aleinikov. Anderson thinks it should be his free kick. So Rodionov and Besanov are the 2 players replaced. Rodionov, who was actually on the field, Besanov, who was off getting treatment, and the double substitution takes place. And here's Steve Hodge. Sansom. Hodge very much a left-sided player, as indeed Brian Robson is, but he didn't want to be typecast as a left winger, which I think Brian Clough had in his mind that Hodge would be at his most useful for Nottingham Forest in that role. So there came the parting of the ways. Doubtless if Brian's listening, he'll put me right on that someday. Blocking is offside, behind Mark Wright. Chivadze. Here's Gotsmanov. It's been quite difficult for England to track down. Hoddle. And the lack of strength in Wilkins' tackling showing then. And blocking is away. Kogratiev in the middle. And he almost got there first. Shilton save. Very well indeed from Litovchenko. Well, the 2 Soviet substitutes both involved there. After Wilkins had been caught, really sold short a little by Hoddle. Kondratiev couldn't make it. Litovchenko did, but so too, bravely for England, did Peter Shilton.
Super save. Blocking really has lost none of that excellent pace.
Litovchenko. This time Wilkins does win it. Hoddle. England operating in the second half with Waddle on the right, and Hoddle allowed a little bit more licence to get into the middle of the field, where he is much happier, of course. Still difficult for the back players to pick out the two front men without a big man like Mark Hateley. Sansom. Zavarov. Looking to take on Wilkins, who was quite happy to retreat. And a misplaced pass by Zavarov. And tonight's attendance in Tbilisi, 62,000. But they haven't had a great deal to cheer about from the home point of view. Alenikov. We've had 1 hour of the match, and it's still goalless. Demianenko, who still looks a potent force. Kuznetsov. Butcher unable to deliver the ball into the feet of Gary Lineker. Bobby Robson very much wanted to include Tony Woodcock when he knew that there was doubt about Hateley, but the timing of Woodcock's injury was very unfortunate. It was a late reaction to a knock on Saturday, and it happened too late in the small hours of Sunday morning, really, for England to call up another replacement forward who might well have been the player of the man sat alongside me, David Pleat, Mick Harford.
I think we've seen, whilst we've been here, the difficulties of a national team manager. He hasn't had the players that he's wanted. 1 or 2 players have come with knocks and strains. Not until yesterday could he really pick a side because of that. And here we're seeing tonight Beardsley and Lineker playing quite sprightly, balls to feet, but we do, because we lack a big man, we're unable to hit that ball into the box where we may frighten the Russians and put a header in.
And where we may frighten other countries in Mexico, of course. So if you're sitting at home in judgment, do bear that in mind. Chibadze. Here's Demianenko with perhaps a clear run at Evanderson, although Ray Wilkins providing a second line of defence. England quite happy that Demianenko looked in field. Hodge. Litovchenko's back heel. Zavarov, block in. And Hodge, who had made the original mistake, redeemed the error.
I can't help feeling at times the pitch is thwarting the accuracy of pass. It's definitely not as even a pitch as it appears.
Alongside me, a champion, of course, of the plastic surface. That is, as they say, another question. A flick from Beardsley. Played wide by Hoddle. Here's Hodge. That's neatly done by Steve Hodge. Sansom arriving in support, but Hodge gets in the cross himself. Lineker looking to lay it off with the chest. And Beardsley pressing strongly. And almost robbing Gottsman off inside his own penalty area. Bobby Robson was placing great importance in the training this morning of the industry of Lineker and Beardsley to keep harassing and keep chasing and stop the Soviets building from the back. And they might be able to do just that here. That, of course, is a wearying process for the front men. I'm sure Mick Shannon would have some views on that. Sansom covering and keeping Blokhin at bay. 99th cap, 37 goals for the Soviet Union, Oleg Blokhin.
as the game's worn on, Shivadze is sat deeper as the sweeper, and the two full-back players in the wide positions, Demianenko and Kuznetsov, have just pushed in further.
Anderson. Now right. Sansom away on the far side, and Wilkins can find him. Hodges ahead of him up the touchline. And Glenn Hoddle's made a run down that inside left channel. Mistake by Litovchenko. And it was Hodge beavering away for England, and he's tripped. And England have a free kick in a threatening position.
I feel Hodge is adding a little bit of spark to the proceedings. He's got that brightness to want to go past people. He's got the inclination to go past people. And that's only a good thing when everyone else wants to just pass it. He wants to attack people with the ball.
Showing some of the ambition that our panellists were talking about at half-time. It's Hoddle with the free kick. And Butcher, who couldn't quite lean in to get a position to make a header. Anderson. Just past the 20-minute point in the second half. If you've been watching from the outset, I apologise if we keep mentioning the score, but there are a lot of people coming home from work, and it's still the Soviet Union 0, England 0. I understand you lost pictures just for a moment, but back here in Tbilisi, you missed nothing of the action. Blocking. Zavarov. Litovchenko has shown one or two neat touches, coming on to things from midfield. All the way back to Chivadze. And that should suit England's strength, just chipping the ball forward like that, although Gotsmanov has, for a second, taken the ball away from Sansom, who has it back and picks out Hoddle. Waddle, who does remain the great England enigma, really, but that's a raking pass for Beardsley, anticipating the mind of his old Newcastle teammate. Splendid work from Beardsley, and it's 1-0! England had taken the lead and scored the first goal against the Soviet Union in a major international since 1979. And Chris Waddle, who started it all off, arrived in the middle after Beardsley had done so well. And how about this for a finish?
Wonderful Newcastle United combination, that. The way Beardsley won that ball against the massive Soviet defender Bugnov was terrific. Good pass, good attack, early ball in the box, well finished. Couldn't wish for anything better. It's an exciting scoreline in view of the Soviets' record.
So we've reached the three-quarter mark of this international here in Tbilisi, and England have the lead. And Chris Waddle, who's certainly got his critics, but he may well have gone some way towards securing a definite berth in Mexico and repaying the faith that Bobby Robson has showed in him. Started the move in his own half, and a rasping shot to end it all. Oh, Waddle's been in tremendous goal-scoring form for Tottenham recently, and he lets fly again. 4 goals in his last 4 First Division games, and Bobby Robson, the look of a manager who knows that a gamble has come off. One of the nice part of the facilities here, that all the announcements being given in English as well as in Russian. Gotsmanov.
Little sign of frustration there by Gotsmanov. England are defending very well. They're getting behind the ball, and they have been doing all this half. And Mark Wright's asserted himself this half too.
So the game is there for the taking now for England. They've still got plenty of work to get through in the last quarter of the game. Taking the forward no slip-ups, but Chris Waddle has given them a smell here of what would be a splendid victory. His previous international goal against Turkey at Wembley. But in a sense, with no disrespect to the Turks, this is a real international goal. And just as there are smiles on the England bench, the frowns on the brow of Malofeyev and the frustration that he must be feeling. Given every opportunity, of course, the Soviet manager to get his team in the right frame of mind and organised tactically with the amount of preparation. But Waddle and company at the moment are in the ascendant. Terry Butcher trying to sneak up unnoticed on the far side, as if anyone could miss him, but he gets the header back across the face of the goal. Gary Lineker over the top, and they did neglect Butcher.
Superbly accurate ball, and Butcher. You just wonder what Lineker's going to be like when he gets that pelvic problem cured.
Kondratiev, and it's Butcher having to do the defending now. Godsmanov. And Chilton giving the instructions. Such a commanding goalkeeper, even when he doesn't need to come and actually get involved in the play himself, telling Sansom what the position was. Chibadze. Here's Alenikov, who's suddenly unmarked in the midfield. England plug the gap. Now Wilkins. And look at the space that the Soviets have given to Steve Hodge. Beardsley's gone outside him. Lineker joined by Wilkins in the middle. This is Hoddle. Sansom. We talked earlier about England's ability to keep the ball when they did win it. We were worried whether they would win it often enough, but they're able to keep possession again at the moment. Right. So it's good news we bring you so far from Tbilisi. England lead 1-0. A goal from Chris Waddle after 22 minutes of the second half. Litovchenko. And Bubnov. It will be interesting to see whether the Soviets can improvise and change their way of playing here in their hour of need. They are very rigid in their thinking and their approach. And this time it's Lineker. Found by Hoddle. Had to take the shot under pressure.
Once again, a superb defence-splitting ball. I mean, Hoddle must have eyes in the back of his head. He sees spaces like no other player. Wonderful pass. And with Lineker's speed, you've always got such a terrific chance, even against the best defenders in the world, of getting behind them. But you've got to have the man to produce those passes, and Hoddle's the man.
The last team to win a major international in the Soviet Union were West Germany. Back on this ground, in fact, in November 1979. But let's not count our chickens yet. Godsmanov. And that deflects off right when it was passing easily for Chilton to collect in a corner. Godsmanov. Zavarov. It hits Hodge. Blocking, but he wants to use his left foot all the time. And Mark Wright did well. Hoddle. England have Trevor Stephen waiting to come on as Chivadze carries the ball forward.